On this episode of RevHang, Ben and I talk about the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Let's do it. Hello everybody and welcome back to RevHang. I'm Nathan and alongside me as always, virtually, is my good friend and co-host Ben Bagley. How you doing, Ben?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Just getting into the holiday spirit, putting up Christmas lights, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Sounds fun. It is in fact that time of year. How did that go? Did you hit any snags or hiccups?
Not really, no. Just had to add a few extra hooks, and my hands smell like wet leaves and plastic now. But aside from that, not so bad.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes, yeah. Well, we are officially recording this the day before Thanksgiving in the United States. About to go on our holiday breaks, have a long weekend, which I know everyone here in the States is excited for, because why would you not be?
Oh, yeah. Everyone in the US, I'm sure, has had the same long week that we have.
Yes, yeah, Ben and I were just talking off air about the joys of short work weeks and how you still have to do the same amount of work as a regular week, but just in a condensed period of time.
Yep, everybody's in a rush, but also doesn't care quite as much. So it leads to a whole host of interesting situations that you have to resolve in a matter of hours.
Yes, it is always entertaining. But this is not a workplace podcast. This is a racing podcast. So let's dive right in with some paddock news for Formula One. Cadillac has officially joined the engine manufacturers list for the new regulations coming up in 2026. I don't believe they will officially be on the grid until 2028, though, if I read everything right.
Yeah, the last meeting that they had during the Vegas Grand Prix was talking about missed opportunities from not being able to sign on for 2026.
Yeah. But as we know, Cadillac has ties with Andretti, who is currently trying their very best to get onto the Formula One grid as early as 2026, possibly 2025 even at this point. I kind of doubt that at this point, though. But yeah, I think this move by Cadillac is going to make Formula One as an entity look even sillier if they decide to reject Andretti's proposal.
Yeah, because Cadillac isn't really going to be offering engines to anyone aside from Andretti.
Yeah.
At least that's what it seems like. So,
yeah.
We'll add it to the list of things that make the FIA and FOM seem very silly.
Yes, that is a ever-increasing list of things. But anyway, so that's kind of all of the paddock news that we have for this week. So let's move into the Las Vegas Grand Prix and start with qualifying. It was a very exciting qualifying session. There was kind of chaos all over the place. But in first place, this does not look right. Did Carlos Sainz? No, he did not. Why is it saying that Carlos Sainz started second? Oh, he qualified second. He did not start second. That's right. Okay,
We're in the qualifying section of the podcast.
Yes, this is not the official starting order. This is just qualifying. We can give approximations. I don't have the sheet in front of me. But so, Charles Leclerc qualified first, followed by Carlos Sainz in P2 and Max Verstappen in P3. Carlos Sainz took a 10-place grid penalty for changing an engine, which we will talk about later.
Oh, man, yeah.
Fourth place was Russell, fifth was Gasly, 6 through 10 was Albon, Logan Sargent, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, and Fernando Alonso. Notable people outside the top 10 include Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez, Lando Norris, and Oscar Piastri. Starting way in the back, were Lando and Oscar. McLaren did not qualify well at this track.
No, this did not seem to really be their track at all.
Yeah, they didn't quite have the pace that they usually do. They did seem to have more race pace. Oscar was definitely pushing through the field, but in terms of one lap, McLaren was not having it this week.
Yeah, Lando Norris starting 10 places behind Alex Albon is kind of puts into perspective. Also, just how fast the Williams cars are on those straights.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is This is as close to a track made for that car as you get.
Pretty much. I mean, that's with Logan Sargent starting P7. Like, that's only at this track would that ever happen. Not to slander Logan Sargent, but also kind of to slander Logan Sargent. Don't hate the guy. Nice guy. I just don't think he has the chops for F1. But personal opinions aside, good qualifying from him, regardless of the rocket ship that he was driving.
Yep.
All right, let's go into the race. On the first lap, Verstappen and Leclerc went off the track into turn 1, with Verstappen coming out ahead. Alonso, Bottas, and Sainz spun in turn 1, but all continued on. Most of them had damage. Lando Norris crashed on lap 3 after a huge tank slapper, causing a safety car. He was okay, but was transferred to the hospital for observation, but I'm not sure what came of that. I just know he's fine and he'll be on track in Abu Dhabi. So it was a pretty big crash, though. Verstappen was given a 5-second penalty for forcing Leclerc off the track. Piastri charged through the field from the back of the grid after the restart. On lap 16, Leclerc passed Verstappen into turn 14 with a massive dive bomb. On lap 17, Piastri and Hamilton made contact, giving both drivers punctures. Both were able to make it to the pits okay. Piastri actually had his race was not hindered that much. On lap 25, Verstappen and Russell came together, causing damage to both cars and bringing out the safety car for debris. This shook the field up completely, putting Leclerc in the lead. Russell got a 5-second penalty for contact with Verstappen. On lap 32, Perez took the lead from Leclerc, as Perez had fresher tires and Leclerc was struggling with his old tires. On lap 35, Leclerc took the lead back from Perez. One lap later, Verstappen passed Perez for P2, and then the lap after that, Verstappen passed Leclerc to take the lead. On lap 43, Leclerc made a mistake promoting Perez to P2, and on the final lap of the race, Leclerc absolutely sent it into turn 14, overtaking Perez at the last opportunity for P2.
Yet another Perez P2 snatched right before the line.
On the last lap, yep. Absolutely brutal, but very exciting to watch.
Yeah.
All right, so results of the race. The winner was Max Verstappen by a country mile. It would have been even more if he hadn't slowed down to tow Perez along, unsuccessfully, unfortunately.
He slowed down by a full second, but he was still like 1.7 seconds ahead of him.
Yeah. Second place was Leclerc, third was Perez. Fourth and fifth were Ocon and Stroll, both with great races. Helped by that safety car in the middle of the race, for sure. 6 through 10 were Sainz, Hamilton, Russell, Alonso, and Piastri. And then 11 through 15 were Gasly, Albon, Magnussen, Ricciardo, and Zhou. And 16 through 17 running off the finishers were Sargent and Bottas. And then we had 3 retirements, and they were Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hülkenberg, and Lando Norris. Hülkenberg and Tsunoda had mechanical problems, and Lando obviously crashed into the wall. Alrighty. So a few things to talk about, which I'm sure we were all expecting after the Las Vegas Grand Prix. First off, in FP1, this was a whole debacle. A drain cover.
What FP1?
Huh?
What FP1?
Yeah, exactly. So about, I think it was like 8 minutes or less into the session, Carlos Sainz drove over a drain cover. It became loose and shot up into the bottom of his car and damaged, I believe, the battery heavily, causing $1.5 million worth of damage to that Ferrari. Very unfortunate stuff for Carlos. It was not his fault. He was, however, given a 10-place grid penalty for changing that part because he had used all of his allotted parts for the season. Definitely not his fault. Very controversial penalty. I am on the side that it is absolutely tragic for Sainz, but you can't.
I think it was controversial, though. I think everybody kind of agrees that it was wrong.
I mean, it was. Here's the thing. I think it was unfair, yes, but at the same time, it would have caused a massive kerfuffle if he did not get a penalty. Uh, Teams would have filed protests and all of this stuff because the rules were not followed to the T. You could argue that Sainz would have gotten an advantage for having brand new engine parts with just 2 races left in the season, whereas everyone else is trying to keep their last engine up and running, so maybe not be running them as hard. While I do agree that since it wasn't Sainz's fault, it is absolutely horrible and gut-wrenching for him. I don't see how the FIA could not hand him that penalty.
Okay,
I would like your
can
thoughts
kinda
on
see
that. I would like your thoughts on that.
But there's got to be some room for like not interpretation, but I don't know. There's there's got to be some room built in for stuff like this, right? Though, because but I guess you do kind of gain an advantage for putting in a new power unit.
Yeah, I think it's really tough because it's like that's super unfair to Ferrari, but at the same time, it's unfair for Ferrari to have a brand new engine component in their car, and then not get a penalty for it. So it's like it's really tough, but I think they could have maybe given him a smaller penalty, which I know isn't the rule. But if there was
or
wiggle
maybe
room,
give like everybody else one extra power unit change. I don't know.
That seems like that could be a mess, but
one more race, but everybody has fresh power units.
Possibly. Yeah, but that gets into like the whole, what if a team has already taken, like I know Yuki Tsunoda took a grid penalty in Austin because he took an extra power supply thing part, and so now it's like AlphaTauri is suing the FIA because it could all just go down this road. So I think what probably could have happened is if there was any lenience in the rules, maybe they give him a way less severe penalty than 10 grid spots. Maybe they maybe just 3 grid places. Maybe they just give the team, I don't even know how they could.
Like a heavy fine or something like that?
Yeah, but then why are you fining the team for something that was the FIA's fault? So it's just
yeah,
it's kind of a mess, which is I think why the FIA's hand was kind of forced in terms of handing him that penalty, which really sucks, and I feel so bad for Carlos, but that's the way the cookie crumbled. So yeah, unfortunate stuff. Even more unfortunate, FP2 was delayed, the start of it, due to the track inspection. I didn't even mention that the rest of FP1 was completely canceled. FP2 was delayed by, I believe, over an hour and a half, if not like 2 hours. And because of some weird rule or law in Las Vegas, they were not able to staff the circuit after a certain amount of time properly, I guess. So they forced all of the fans with tickets to F2 pre-practice 2 to leave the stands, and there are now class action lawsuits being filed against either Liberty Media or Formula One or both, trying to get their money back, which I guess is fair enough.
The practice ticket for this Grand Prix, I think, was like $200.
Yeah, and that's insane. I think what they did was they gave all the fans with practice tickets like a $200 voucher to the F1 store.
Wow, so cool. They can get a $50 t-shirt.
Yeah,
they
right.
Get 4 $50 t-shirts.
Get 4 t-shirts rather than seeing like the actual event.
Yeah.
So there is stuff in the works and on that front. Very unfortunate for those fans. Because I know a lot of fans were only able to afford tickets to practice sessions because the race tickets were insanely expensive.
Yeah. even with the price drops that happened like the week before the race,
Yeah,
because attendance was so low. I
yeah,
mean, it was still pretty out of reach for most people.
yeah.
I mean, you can
It's
consider that general admission tickets to the uh, Texas GP or Austin GP were selling for what, like 300, $350 at Costco?
mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's no question why attendance for this didn't really meet expectations. And I'm sure they still
Yeah.
made loads of money off this event and will continue for quite a long time.
Oh, they did. I think I saw something that said that they made like some insane figure of money from this event.
Yeah,
Everyone was talking about it. It was huge all across the country, even outside of race fans circles. I had
yeah.
people at work coming up who are not F1 fans. They were coming up. They know I am, and so they came
Hmm.
up and asked me about it, and we're talking about it. My girlfriend's parents were talking to me about it, and they don't follow Formula One in the slightest. Uh, it's it was a huge event. On almost Monaco, on the almost the Monaco scale, uh, especially in the United States. So it's yeah, it
Yeah.
generated quite a bit of ad revenue, I am sure.
Except for Monaco, we don't have to deal with Keith Urban and Will I Am in the opening ceremony.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah.
The
They just
celebrities,
wheeling out the best of the 90s to 2000s.
yeah, it was a
Like,
celebrity circus down there.
yeah.
They were everywhere, and it was hard to get a shot without a celebrity in it. Justin Bieber waved the checkered flag for the race. Um, and I mean, there were so many celebrities there.
Yeah.
It was pretty nuts. I think I was correct in my prediction that there would be more at Vegas than there were in Miami, and that was a high bar.
Yep. You were right. Yep.
Um,
Yeah, but
so
even that opening ceremony really set the mood. Like, when I saw that, I was like, oh man, this is definitely not just a race. This is something else entirely. Because they got, what, like half dozen of the most popular washed up artists that they could find in Vegas, I'm sure.
yeah, it was it was definitely an event. uh,
Yeah.
and a show. Max Verstappen was very critical of the race the entire time he was there. Um, and I mean that is definitely he has the right to be critical. It
Yeah, I
was
think most like existing F1 fans who've been fans of the sport for the past year at least all were they're pretty bearish on it.
yes, but
Um,
the
I'll continue.
yeah the thing I think is is that while all existing F1 fans saw this as kind of glitz and glamour and too much, kind of overboard, and I think that it's fair to say that this is going to be the way this race is every year. Um, with that all being said, I think the quality of this race absolutely made up for everything else. I don't think
That is true.
I don't think anybody was expecting the just the level of racing and just how good the race was at this track, because just looking at the track map, it looks super boring. It looks like DRS Train City. Uh, but that was absolutely not the case, and I don't know if it's because it was just resurfaced and so it was super slippery, which it was. Could have had something to do with the cold temperatures, making it even more slippery.
The oil leak at
Could
the
have
start
had
line.
could have had something to do with Lewis Hamilton's show car leaking oil on the start line, um, which is now
Yeah,
being investigated by everybody and their dog.
yeah.
Uh,
No, I really wish the quality of this race could be done without all the stuff around it, because I don't know, it makes me feel like almost reductive in terms of like American culture.
mm-hmm.
Like the American racing culture I want to showcase is like the IndyCar, NASCAR, like grassroots. You know, you're at Mid Ohio, sitting in a lawn chair, watching the cars go past.
I feel like,
and I know it's not really the F1 vibe, but
yeah, I feel like we get that at Austin for sure. I feel like the
yeah,
United
that's
States
true.
Grand Prix is definitely great for that, and you don't get nearly as many celebrities at Austin. I mean, we've seen Shaq there a few times, but uh, in terms of the celebrity races, it's just been Miami and Las Vegas. Even Monaco isn't nearly as bad as those
Yeah.
two. But yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you there that it's not really what most Americans want to be seen as. Because I mean, 2 out of the 3 races that that people who don't live in the United States see are races like Miami and Las Vegas. In
Yeah,
terms of the
those are the
American
highest
ones.
profile ones that get, the most coverage.
So
But
it's not a great look for the U.S., or at least a lot of people
no,
don't think so. I mean, it makes U.S. still look like, we're in the glory days of Hollywood, which I really don't think is true anymore.
we're in a post-glory days economy.
Yeah, and it feels like we're kind of trying to reach back to that. But
But yeah, in terms of the racing, it was really good. And looking back, I probably shouldn't have doubted it because America has NASCAR. This is pretty much just a squared off NASCAR track, and we're great at that. Those races are awesome to watch.
this is true. Yeah, I mean, I almost thought of it as like an American Monza because you got the massive
Ah,
straights, but you also have hairpins and chicanes. Uh, and I feel like this track is very similar to Monza. If you look at the rear wings of the cars, they were definitely on super low downforce spec.
yeah.
And there was so much overtaking. I thought for sure it would be just like a huge DRS train, but that wasn't the case. I think that's because the straight is so long and the rear wings were so flat that I don't think DRS had as much to do with the race as just the general slipstream did.
Yeah, I think this is a great race to showcase what these cars could be like if they were made without DRS in mind.
Yeah. Uh,
Like if they wanted to go away from DRS but still have passing, like this is a pretty good race to showcase what that could look like.
yeah, for sure. I mean, the rundown from turn 12 to turn 14 that's the run down the strip, and it's the second longest straight on the calendar behind only the straight in Baku. And it just feels like it takes forever on that straight, but that's where a lot of the overtaking was done, was into turn 14.
Yeah, who can brake latest?
Yeah, which the answer was always Charles Leclerc in this race.
He was bombing that, yeah.
It happened like 3, 4, 5 times. He just sent it into that corner. So yeah, it was actually a very, very good race. I would argue definitely top 3 of the season. There's definitely an argument that it was the best race of the season.
I think Brazil's a really high bar to beat for me.
Yeah.
It might just be because it's also so recent in memory, but I thought Brazil was one of my favorite races of the year.
Brazil was very good. Zandvoort was also very good. That was kind of a crazy race with weather. Singapore, I thought at the time was the best race of the season, but kind of looking back, it was really just the last couple laps that things got really exciting. So I wouldn't say the whole race was the best race of the season in Singapore.
The Rogue One of races.
Right.
The last part tricks you into thinking it was more exciting than it was.
A fair assessment there, Ben.
I said what I said. I'll fight any Star Wars fan.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I would say Vegas is definitely in my top 3 for this year. But yeah, Brazil was also really good. And then Zandvoort. I don't really remember Zandvoort.
This has been such a long season. I can barely remember anything from before summer break.
Oh, I know. I was just thinking the same thing earlier. I was watching this video, and they were talking about the Spanish Grand Prix when Verstappen won, and it was a double podium for Mercedes. Like, it was Lewis and George on the podium, and I was thinking, I'm like, I literally do not remember the Spanish Grand Prix this year at all. Like, zero memory of it. So there's a few races I do remember. I remember Canada. I remember Australia for sure.
Yeah, I remember Australia. I don't remember Miami at all.
Yeah, I remember that it happened, but I don't remember much after that. But I like do not even remember watching the Spanish Grand Prix, but I know I must have. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just the product of it being such a long season. I mean, we're almost into December. By the time this F1 race, this season is over, it will be Sunday the 26th of November. I know we're going into December next year. But yeah, so we've got December, January, February. Testing is halfway through February, and then early March is when the next season starts. So it's like the off seasons are getting shorter, the regular seasons are getting longer. Which, as a fan, I mean, I'm not really complaining. I love F1 and I love watching the races, but at the same time, also as a fan, it almost feels too long because I feel like the excitement of the championship really only lasts for the first half of the season the last few years, except for 2021. But with the era, like the Mercedes era of dominance, and now the Red Bull era of dominance, it's like, once you get more than halfway through the season, it's like, all the points, all the spreads have been made. And, I mean, to be fair, we do have a pretty exciting battle for P2 right now. But it becomes less about the championship winner and more about the midfield, which is fine. But there's just, I think, in general, I feel like there's more excitement in terms of the unknown in the first, let's say, 5 races of the season.
Yeah.
Just because the championship's still wide open. But once you get 15 races into the championship, Max Verstappen is 400 points above his next rival. It's like...
Which is just silly to be able to say.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's... the season's pretty long. I don't really want it to get any longer than this. I think this is as long as it should get, and we even had a couple races canceled from this year, so...
Yeah, we didn't do Imola. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Imola was canceled. Shanghai was canceled again.
Yeah. I don't know if we're really going to get Shanghai back.
I think it's on the schedule next year.
Is it
but
really?
It might get canceled again. Who knows? There's... Well, let's not. We're not going to talk about that.
We're not going to, yeah.
But
that's
anyway.
A different podcast.
Yeah, that's a much, much different podcast.
I left my tinfoil hat in the other room.
Yeah. But yeah, so for the time being, Shanghai is on the calendar. And honestly, that track is awesome. So if we do end up going to Shanghai, I would be excited to see that track again because we haven't seen that track since 2019. It's been 4 years. Once COVID hit, that kind of threw a wrench in everything, and that race has been off. Yeah, right, exactly. But anyway, that kind of... Oh, a couple more things to talk about. Sergio Perez secured P2 in the championship after this race, and Lewis Hamilton secured a P3. So those are your top 3 finishers: Verstappen, Perez, and Hamilton. Sainz and Alonso are tied at 4th and 5th with 200 points. Sainz breaks the tiebreaker because he won a race this season, the only person not from Red Bull to win a race. And speaking of which, with this race win, Red Bull broke the record for the most wins by a constructor in a single season, beating Mercedes in 2016 with 19 wins.
Wow. I mean, they got a lot of opportunities to do that, but that's still very impressive.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that they've only not won one race this year is remarkable.
Yeah, and I'm glad Perez is able to get P2. It was kind of hairy there for a little bit, but
it was, and then Hamilton had really bad. It was Brazil that kind of did Mercedes in. Both Mercedes at Brazil were awful.
Yep.
So that kind of gave Perez a lot of breathing room. I think Hamilton had to outscore Perez by like 6 points this race to not have the title or the P2 go to Perez. But that definitely did not happen.
Yeah.
And even still, it would have been basically like in Abu Dhabi, Perez would have to DNF and Lewis would have to win for that to switch. But anyway, I am also glad that Perez secured P2. He's had a tumultuous season, to say the least. But it's good to see him at least pick up that P2. And we'll see what happens with him. I know we've talked about this a lot, so we won't beat that dead horse. Red Bull, we talked about, broke the record. So I think that rounds off the race. Let's go through. Well, I mean, the standings haven't really changed much. So
it kind of went over the top.
We'll talk about
4
that.
or 5 anyways.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about the standings at the end of the next podcast because next race is the last one. But we will talk about the pit stop championship. McLaren and Oscar Piastri took the first place in this week's pit stop championship. At the time of 1.99 seconds, we are consistently getting sub 2 second pit stops now.
We're so back.
Right back to where we were pre-safety regulations.
Yeah, the FIA is going to have to come up with some new regulations or else teams are going to keep on getting under 2.
I absolutely hate the fact that you're probably right. It's such a shame. I understand.
Manufactured difficulty.
Yeah, it's come on. Let them be fast. The faster the pit stops, the more impressive it is. Like, could you imagine the times we would have seen this year if those old regulations were still the way it was? Like, we had a 1.8 second pit stop by McLaren this year, and that probably would have been in the 1.6s or less if the new regulations.
I bet we would have seen a 1.5 second pit stop from Red Bull this year.
For sure.
Which, could you imagine how much more dominant they could be if they were saving an extra half second on every pit stop they made this year?
Yeah, but then every other team would also be saving a half second, so
I guess, yeah. That's a good point.
But yeah, I understand why they did it. And honestly, well, thinking about it, I don't think they actually do have to do anything again because the regulation requires the gunman to basically assure that the wheel is on correctly, and check it and then push the button to confirm. But thinking about it now, it's like, I don't know if they're actually checking the wheel.
They're just sending it.
Yeah, anyways. They're just like, oh yeah, looks good. And push the button as soon as they get the wheel supposedly on. But maybe there's some system in the gun that won't let the button actually go green unless the wheel is actually, like, it has like some torque measuring device or something that ensures that the wheel is properly attached. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, another sub 2 second pit stop from Piastri. 2nd through 5th were Tsunoda, Sainz, Perez, and Russell. 6 through 10, running off the points finishers were Sargent, Albon, Bottas, Verstappen, and Magnussen. For standings, nothing has changed in the driver's standings. It is still Perez on top, followed by Leclerc and Norris, with Verstappen in 4th. And then the only thing that has changed in the Constructors' Championship is Williams has jumped above Alfa Romeo into P8. Incredible scenes. Other than that, all the teams are fairly well spaced apart, and I don't see the order changing much. From here on out, there are a few ties in the Drivers' Championship, so that could still change. But even then, a lot of the drivers are spaced out pretty nicely, so Pit Stop Championship I don't think is nearly as spicy as it was last year. But that's okay. Let's move on to the
We're settling in. We're getting used to it.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be different next year. Maybe Perez will not be the king of the pit stop.
Oh.
Um, who knows? Overtake of the week. There was only one option, and it was the Leclerc overtake on Perez on the last lap of the race.
Agree.
The absolute dive bomb. If you want to look up the definition of send it in the dictionary, there's a picture. There's even a GIF of this move.
A GIF?
Yeah. They put a GIF in the dictionary just
Incredible.
for this move. So...
No matter what, somebody making an overtake on Perez during the last lap of an F1 race will always get overtake of the week.
Yeah.
We're 2 for 2 so far.
Brutal, yeah. I mean, yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think this move was better than the Alonso move, though, if I'm being completely fair.
Yeah. The Alonso one, you could kind of see that coming. This one was an absolute dive bomb.
This one will challenge for overtake of the season, I believe. So we'll see. I have to go through all the overtake of the weeks again. There were some good ones. But okay, going into our predictions for this last week and the upcoming week. Let's start with the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Remind everybody of the top 5. It was Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Ocon, and Stroll. The 4th and 5th, I'm sure we did not get anywhere near.
No, we did not.
All right, Ben, give me your top 5 predictions.
Right, so I did have Verstappen in first. Sainz was my second, which...
Brutal.
Yeah, I felt so confident about that during qualifying until I realized that he still had the 10th-place penalty. I had Perez in third, so got that one. And then I had Piastri and Norris in 4th and 5th, and that really did not pan out at all. And then Albon was my dark horse.
Yeah. If we want to talk about Piastri and Norris not panning out, I had Verstappen winning with Perez in second, and then I had Norris and Piastri third and fourth, and then I had Sainz in fifth.
We both had the wrong Ferrari.
Yes, and it was, yeah. It was not a good week for us, prediction-wise. My dark horse was Pierre Gasly, and I was very excited after qualifying because he qualified fourth. And then he sank like a brick. So, yeah, I thought I was going to nail it.
He had some moments of brilliance during that race.
He did. It was weird because I feel like he had a good race, but he just also just kept falling backwards.
Yeah, I don't remember when he started falling backward, but I seem to remember him having a pretty good race for most of it.
Yeah.
Which is weird, but oh well.
Same with Albon. Albon qualified extremely well with your dark horse prediction there. Qualified super well. And actually drove pretty well for most of the race, but then as the laps wound down, he, I think something with the safety car, I don't think he came in when everybody else did, so he had super old tires at the end of the race. And was not able to defend his position. That's probably what happened to Gasly too.
Yep.
So yeah. All right. Fastest lap went to Oscar Piastri. What did you say, Ben?
Well, I had the same thing as you, and we had Verstappen.
We did both have Verstappen. Yes.
It felt like such a shoe-in. I don't know how, like Piastri was so far down, but he still went for fastest lap and.
Yeah, so the reason is because he started on the hard tires. His second stint was on the hard tires, and I think he was waiting for a safety car, hopefully, at the end of the race, so he'd get a cheap pit stop, because he was running up in like 4th or 5th.
Yeah.
But that never came, so with, I think, 7 or 8 laps left, he pitted for soft tires, and ran the rest of the race on soft.
Barely got that 10th that he needed for the extra point.
Yeah. I think he made a last lap pass to get himself into the points. So he did finish 10th, but he did it on soft tires, and obviously, just a couple lap old softs are going to be way better than 25 lap old hards on zero fuel. So he was bound to take that fastest lap.
That makes sense.
But it was going between Verstappen and Leclerc for the majority of the race before that. And the driver of the day was deservedly Charles Leclerc.
And I had Sainz. I had, the wrong Ferrari driver.
And I had Perez. So I think we were kind of dancing around it there. Perez,
Yeah.
I think, was in the running for it, but didn't get it. I think Leclerc
He was
definitely
pretty
deserved
close,
it.
yeah. Yeah, Leclerc definitely, yeah. He didn't convert the pole this year, but he got so close.
Yeah. What were they saying during the race that he's now had 12 poles without a win
Without a win, yeah.
in a row, or like, yeah, he's the last 12 of his pole
For the
positions.
career, yeah.
He's not converted. And I
It's crazy.
presume that probably all but one or two of those races have been Max Verstappen wins. So absolutely
Yeah,
brutal.
especially last year.
Yeah. It's kind of becoming a meme I'm seeing flying around Reddit and other sources. Like,
It's
oh,
the
Leclerc's
new
on
Michael
pole,
curse.
Verstappen's gonna win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully he wins the race. It's been a couple years, I think, since he's won a race, or maybe he won in Austria last year. I don't remember.
I think he got a couple wins, just not from pole position in
Yeah,
2022.
maybe. I don't remember.
Because he was leading the championship for a while, so like,
He was. You're right. He must have won. Oh yeah, he won in Bahrain, I believe, and then he won in Austria, I think. I know Carlos won in Britain.
yeah. Man, so long ago.
Yeah, crazy. My recall on the probably 75 plus Formula One races I've watched now is fading.
Rapidly
It's
dwindling.
probably more than that. It's probably over 100 at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Plus IndyCar, plus some MotoGP.
yeah, I think I have deleted all of my MotoGP files and made space for other things. It's fun to watch, but not my cup of tea, which is why we dropped it from this show.
Yep.
All right. So, Formula One Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Give me your top 5 predictions, Ben.
Alrighty, these were super rapid fire, just kind of stream of consciousness. Wrote them out while we were talking about the race results like 10 minutes ago. But I've got Verstappen in first, and I've got Norris in second, followed by Perez, Sainz, and then Hamilton in fifth. And given how he did this race, I put Stroll in my dark horse position.
Gotcha. Alrighty, I have Verstappen winning, obviously, followed by Hamilton in second, Norris in third, Russell in fourth, and Leclerc in fifth. My dark horse, I went with the other Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso.
Huh. Remember when he was getting like P2s?
I do. Now he's a dark
P3s?
horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brutal stuff. I don't know what happened to Aston this year, but hopefully they bounce back.
They forgot to upgrade their car after spring break or summer break.
Honestly. All right. Fastest lap. What do you think's going to happen, Ben?
I've got Verstappen.
I've got Hamilton. Can't give you a reason. Driver of the day. Who do you have?
I have Perez.
And I have Norris. Also,
Norris
can't give
is
you a
honestly
reason.
probably the most solid choice you can make. Like, no matter where he comes in, it feels like Norris has gotten driver of the day for many of the past races since that McLaren upgrade.
I think he's won. He's definitely won the most out of any driver this year.
He's got to be like 3 or 4, right?
I think he's at 4 or 5. Well, 3 or 4. I think probably 4, if I were to guess. But yeah. All right, that runs off our predictions, which means we only have one segment left in the episode, and that would be Ben's words of wisdom. What do you got for us this week, Ben?
So true. So the holidays are coming up, and I was reminded of this by a buddy. But for the holidays, the best gift you can give someone is the gift of you not going into debt. So, people always want to make extravagant gifts or decorate their house super fancy, and Christmas lights are deceptively expensive, I found out last year. You don't realize how much money you spend until you walk out of the store with $200 worth of LED lights. But yeah, if you're struggling, don't overstretch yourself, because going into over the holidays just makes it kind of suck. So it's about the connotation and family and all that stuff. but going into that kind of sucks. So don't do that.
Good financial advice, Ben.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It is definitely always good to not go into debt. All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening to this episode of RevHang. If you enjoyed it, leave a like or a rating on the platform you listened on. It really helps us out. If you want to see updated standings for IndyCar and F1 or a calendar of upcoming racing, the little upcoming racing we have from all sorts of different series left, check out our website, RevHang.com. If you have a question about racing or about us, hit us up on X, formerly known as Twitter, using hashtag RevHangPodcast, and we may feature your question on the next show. You can also follow Ben on Instagram at BenjiMeetsWorld and myself at 2N_squared. You can follow the RevHang page at RevHang Media. We'll be back in a week to talk about the Formula One Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But until then, I have been Nathan.
And I'm Ben.
Thanks for hanging out, guys.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.